Welcome to another episode of Daddy Square. I'm Jan.
I'm Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Jan. I've talked to you before, but okay.
We're getting ready for the holidays.
Yeah, it's Hanukkah on Sunday night. And our school, it's a Jewish school our kids go to, and they sent home, those of you who are Jewish who are listening will know exactly what this is. It's a Hanukkah menorah, a Chanukiah, made of bolts that you screws into, bolts that they glue to the thing. All of you have made one of those at some point in your lives.
I haven't.
And, well, okay, fine. And now we have them of our own from our own children.
This is Jewish, but one thing that is common to all religions is the winter break, which is we are already got all stressed about.
Yeah, we don't want to badmouth our school, but it does seem as if, whenever Monday comes, they say, Tuesday through Friday, we're closed this week.
If I get the kids to school on a Monday, all I hear is TGIM from parents.
Yes, thank God it's Monday. It's true.
If you guys have any ideas of what are you going to do with your kids on the winter break, please let us know at hello@daddysqr.com.
We also want any kind of ideas you have for episodes. We want feedback on how we're doing. We want to make this thing better, and we want to make this thing valuable to you guys.
Today, Alex, we have very full episode, so we're going to talk less and hear more from this conference that we went to in New York a few weeks ago.
Wait, I have to talk less?
We flew to New York to take part in the Men Having Babies conference in New York. They have conferences all over the world, and you're going to hear more about what this conference is, and you're going to get all the feel of the conference throughout this episode. We have 4 short interviews. This conference is focusing mostly on biological parenting. So it's specifically about that.
And it's great that it comes right after the episode where we talked about alternative forms of parenting.
Yes. So we're going to jump right in, right?
Let's do it.
Is that okay with you? The first one that we're going to listen to is our interview with Anthony Brown. He's the founding chairman of Men Having Babies. And let's hear the interview with him on the conference.
Let's go.
We're here with Anthony Brown, chairman of the board of Men Having Babies.
I'm the founding chairman.
Oh, wow.
I am now the chairman emeritus. I have just passed that on to a wonderful man named Sherman Taylor, but I was the founding chairman of the board.
So that means that after many years of the hard work, you get to now allow somebody else to do more of the hard work, and you get to be emeritus?
Exactly.
That's great.
6 years of really developing something that went from 20 guys in a room at the Gay and Lesbian Center to 300 guys here and in Brussels and Toronto and Taipei, and it's just incredible.
So let's go back a little bit. So you know the history of the organization.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about.
Yes,
Men Having
we
Babies.
started at the Gay and Lesbian Center in New York. We were a small group of guys who wanted to get as many answers to the questions about biological parenting as we could. So we had monthly meetings, and we invited in anyone who could answer those questions. We invited in doctors and lawyers and parents, surrogates, psychologists, basically the whole gamut.
And this was a focus on biological parenting.
It was specific on biological parenting. The Gay and Lesbian Center has a lot of family programming,
right?
And this one was very specific to biological parenting for men.
Yeah.
So from from those monthly meetings, we developed this full conference format, and developed the relationships with our sponsors. And eventually we had to break away from the Gay and Lesbian Center because our dream was to create a foundation that would help financially individuals and couples who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford surrogacy.
Right.
So to do that, we had to become a 501c3. We had to be our own nonprofit, and we couldn't do that under the umbrella of the Gay and Lesbian Center. So that's when we broke off. And we also have created the first only framework of ethical guidelines for intended parents to go through the surrogacy process. Because I think a lot of people, my husband and myself included, felt like we wanted to adopt.
Right.
And that was where we first put our initial energy. we didn't know what surrogacy really was. We had an amazing gift from the heavens that allowed us to do this, but we wanted to, one of the inspirations for creating this framework was to help other intended parents understand the surrogacy process, understand how to do it in the right way that honors all of the parties. And we were really successful with it. And the GPAP program, the Gay Parenting Assistance Program, the foundation, has now given away over $2 million in discounted services, donated services, and cash grants. We've had 33 babies, 2 families born.
And they belong to your organization.
They're
your property.
No, I wish I could claim that, but I am very happy to say our organization helped their families have those children.
Can you go back for a second and talk a little bit about the framework for ethical guidelines? Because I'm really fascinated by this. Is the question and the balance between other options for having children and surrogacy? Is that the primary question?
That's one of the questions. One of the questions that has emerged as being even more significant from that is it's providing states like New York that currently are attempting to develop legislation to regulate compensated surrogacy, and also in Europe, where compensated surrogacy has a very it's very misunderstood. So our ethical guidelines have become a sort of a roadmap for the gay and lesbian family organizations in countries like France and Spain and Italy and Belgium to say, hey, wait a minute, look at this. This can be done right.
Right.
So those guidelines contain basic, foundational principles, like you have to have independent representation, legal representation for your surrogate. Your surrogate has to understand in her own language everything that is going on.
Right.
You have to maintain a relationship with your surrogate. And then we also have suggested best practices. And by the way, any of the sponsors that work with our organization, they have to meet our guidelines.
Well, that's great.
Right.
That's the only way that they can be part of our organization. And then the best practices are even more elevated, more sophisticated levels of protection, both for the surrogate and for the intended parents, going into things like regulation about the compensation, to make the compensation more ethical, to understand what the compensation is for, because a lot of people, particularly in Europe, they think it's buying a baby, or they think it's taking advantage of a woman when they don't understand that the women have agency. They understand what they're doing. They're doing it because they love it. They love being able to help someone else have a family.
Right.
But they're also making an incredible sacrifice. The dedication to the process, the medical dangers to their bodies, the time that they put into it. The compensation is very justifiable when you think in terms like that.
Right.
And I also know that a lot of gay men are kind of reluctant to approach surrogacy in the first place because of the money, because it's like known to be an expensive process. So how do you approach that when you talk in the conferences and stuff like that?
I'll give you some statistics that might help answer that question. When we started before GPAP, the demographic of our audience, we would have 60 to 70 people, and they'd be in their 40s and 50s.
Okay.
Now we have 300 people, and they're in their 20s and 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the whole concept, I think, has changed. I think people see, I grew up in a time when if you were gay, you weren't going to get married, you certainly weren't going to have a family.
Right.
And now we're having, young gay men coming up where they don't even think twice about that.
Yeah.
It's an option. So it's
I
really,
assume
it's amazing.
more. So you get more and more applications of people who want
We
to help.
absolutely do, and I think also more and more financial planners are including in young gay men's financial plans a savings program towards.
So
family
how do you
building.
choose between them?
Yeah. What are the primary considerations?
The criteria for the program? The criteria for the program, it takes into consideration a lot of different factors. You have to be a gay man or a trans woman to apply. Mm-hmm. You can be in a relationship. You can be single. Mm-hmm. But if you already have a child, you're not eligible. There are income ceiling restrictions that change as the variables include your age and your earning capacity, where you live. So I can't really say what if you make more than this, you're not eligible, because it changes from year to year by age, and it changes by applicant and where they're from.
Right.
So I can say that I believe 60% of the people who apply for our stage 1 assistance, which is discounts on the services, which can be as much as 40 grand.
Right.
Yeah.
60% are accepted into the program.
Wow.
So it's very worth, the minimum application fee to be able to find out if you qualify for that.
Tell us about the Time for Families, your website.
Yes, I am a trust and estates, family law, and assisted reproductive technology attorney. I've been practicing for 15 years. I did my internship at Lambda Legal, and I got to work on the Lawrence versus Texas case, which I think is like one of the foundational cases that changed gay rights for all of us, because it decriminalized sodomy, essentially. So I knew that when I started my practice, I wanted to do something. I wanted to focus with the gay and lesbian community. So I started Time for Families because there wasn't a resource out there that was dedicated to both individual gay men, coupled gay men, individual lesbians, coupled lesbians, married, domestic partner, that really walked you through the different steps of, okay, what are the questions that I ask about having a family? For lesbian couples, do I want a known donor, sperm donor? Do I want an anonymous donor? What's the relationship like gonna be with them? I personally am a known donor to a lesbian couple. I have 2 daughters, so I knew, from personal experience what this process was like, both from a legal and a personal perspective.
Right.
So the site goes into that. It goes into ethical surrogacy. It goes into protecting your family once you have it, from an estate planning point of view, from a parentage establishment point of view. And it also highlights individual stories. There's a video library. So it's sort of a whole experience for gay and lesbian individuals and couples who are interested in protecting their family or having a family.
That's great. We went through the surrogacy process, and I think we would have benefited tremendously from your help. Damn it! If only we could go back in time. It was a very, very complex process, obviously, and many, many unknowns. And I can understand why this would be incredibly beneficial, even from the very beginning.
Yeah. It really is. It's also, I have to tell you, an incredibly rewarding way to be a lawyer, because I thought I wanted to work at Lambda Legal.
Right.
And then I worked at Lambda Legal, and I was at a computer for 12 hours a day. And I realized, no, I want to be out with people. I want to help people. So,
have you had any horror stories? You don't have to tell us what they are, but I imagine that there are occasional fiascos in the legality surrounding gay parenting.
There are. And fortunately for me, I haven't had any surrogacy horror stories. But to be honest with you, there are very few surrogacy horror stories now, because there's so much experience in the organizations, the agencies that facilitate the process, and also they know, like the majority of the bad stories came from traditional surrogacy, where the egg donor was also the surrogate mother, and she had an emotional attachment to the child and didn't want to give them up. Where I have seen some issues in my practice is in having known donors for lesbian couples change their minds about the relationship necessarily that they wanted to have with their with the family and with the children, and unfortunately the most, I guess, inflammatory aspect of my practice is probate, because when people die and there's money involved, everyone goes crazy, but that's regardless of sexual orientation.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that's the
money is the great equalizer
it
between
is.
the.
It does so much.
We had one listener who kind of wrote to us after the episode with the doctor. We interviewed Dr. Guy Rindler on our podcast.
Yes.
So he told us the story about having had a surrogate sign up with a surrogate, and she went through partially like the process, and then she decided she doesn't want to do it, and she quit. And that was very. He described that it was very stressful for him, and it's
absolutely.
So did it ever happen? And what do you do in this case? Do you return the money? What happens?
It's a lot of things you can try to contract away. When I heard that story, the first thing that I thought was psychological screening. Invest in psychological screening prior to the journey. And most surrogates are married, have had their own children. They sort of know what the landscape is going to be, and they have an inner desire, usually motivated by a personal experience that they've had with their family or themselves with infertility.
Right.
So getting the right person is the first step. And then after that, even if you've contracted around something like that, contracts will provide for different deposits into escrow accounts and when payments are, go out and are made. But at the end of the day, if someone breaks that contract, it's kind of hard to say, you can't really demand specific performance. You're going to have that baby because you told me.
Right.
That's not really realistic,
Right. Especially not a baby.
And asking for any monies back, if she's halfway through the journey, she's actually done things to earn that compensation. So it's a tough call. And I think that honestly, the emotional toll of that is more devastating than the legal toll of that.
Right. Right.
So just before you go, I want you to tell us a little bit about your personal story. So
I would love to. I would love to. My husband and I have been together for 30 years. We thought that we wanted to adopt, and so we went to all of the adoption meetings at the Gay and Lesbian Center. But we live in the West Village here in New York, and one of the highest demographics in the West Village are single older women, and like 4 of them lived in our building, and we took care of them. And one of them, when she died, she left us a lot of money.
Oh.
We had no idea because she was a hoarder and she lived in filth. But she came from this family money, and all of a sudden we're contacted and we were able to have our family.
Oh my God, it's a movie.
It totally is. It's incredible. Actually, CNN did a documentary about our journey from the beginning to when I ended up adopting our son afterwards.
Amazing.
It's called Gary and Tony Have a Baby, and it was on in 2011.
Wait, but you just said that you adopted?
I had to adopt him because at the time, our son was born in North Carolina, and they didn't recognize our marriage.
I see.
So they would only put my husband on the birth certificate. I didn't have any parental relationship, so I had to do a second parent adoption back here in New York to establish my parental rights.
Oh, okay.
So now our son is 9.
Wow.
He's the light of my life.
And you guys live here,
and we still live in the West in
the West Village.
Teeny little apartment in the West
Wow,
Village.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very
before you
welcome.
leave, I just want to say there's a reason, Jan, why you interview people who have been working in this space for so long. They're good. That was great. That just snapped.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right.
That was Anthony Brown. He kind of gave us an idea of what the organization is about, how it came to be, and what does it actually do. And of course, you can get all of the details on menhavingbabies.org.
If nothing else, this entire episode helped me to recognize just how little homework you and I did before we had our kids, because they have so many resources and so many ideas about how to help you, and meanwhile we just sort of blundered into this whole thing from the beginning.
Yes. The next interviewee is Ron Poole Dayan. He's the executive director of Men Having Babies, and what he's going to give us is the Conference 101. We focused our interview with him around telling us what can you get from these conferences, who can come to these conferences, and what is actually happening there. We can start.
Okay.
We're here with Ron Poole Dayan.
Ron Poole Dayan, yes.
Ron Poole Dayan. He's the executive director of Men Having Babies. Tell us a little bit about the conferences that you guys have, because it's happening all over the world throughout the year, right?
Yes, of course. This is our 14th annual New York conference, but that's just because we're counting the conferences we used to have when we're still part of the LGBT Center here in New York. We used to be a program there. We've incorporated 6.5 years ago as it became evident that we wanted to, have conferences elsewhere or events elsewhere where we already had a large group of people on our Facebook group and our mailing list from outside of New York, but primarily also because we wanted to create what later was called, or is called now, the Gay Parenting Assistance Program. Mm-hmm. So that's what necessitated incorporating a separate organization, but naturally also grew, and from having 1, 2, 3 conferences a year, we started having 6 conferences a year 3 years ago, and now we've grown to 8. which is pretty
So
much
it's
what.
the same cities every year?
So
you're going around?
we have 4 domestic conferences: New York, San Francisco, Chicago, and Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So those are our 4 regional conferences in the United States. And then we have a very large conference in Europe, in Brussels every year, where we have similar numbers that we
Yes.
see here. We've had conferences in Tel Aviv for several years now. And this year we've added Toronto, where we had a surprisingly large number of attendees. So that's staying for 2019 as well. And the last one that we've added for 2019, which we're sure is going to be the beginning of a tradition, is our Asian conference, which will be in Taipei.
Wow. You know, we are parents of twin 3-year-olds, and we did the IVF route and all that, which was quite an undertaking. We, I'll admit, used our very extensive approach to research, which was none at all, and we went into the process. We should have done much more. And I guess my question for you is, when people come to an event like this, when people come to an event like this, what do you think that they are expecting? What kind of expectations do they come in with, and how do those expectations get changed by the experience that they have here?
The word conference sometimes creates the wrong impression, the wrong expectations. It's not a scientific or educational conference in the classic sense that you come and you have one room about this type of medical procedure, another room about that type of medical procedure. Some of the guys actually once used that term, and we kind of think it works, is that it's a little more like a boot camp. Right. You come here, and over the course of 2 days, you are immersed through this very extensive 101, surrogacy 101 course with the addition of the ability to interact with people. That could be the providers you use, could be people who help you. A lot of people come to us, our board members or staff, and ask questions in between. And the ability to then go in depth depends on your needs, since we do have in-depth panels about the medical, legal, financial aspects of the process. So we know from people that many times their expectations are not very focused. They just know they want to do something about it. They know that, as you know, in our day and age, you go online, you find a lot of information, but you don't know what is right, what is fake, where to start, what is financially motivated, business motivated, what is actually more unbiased. So we provide the editorial authority that says, if you want to embark on a surrogacy journey as a gay couple, or gay single for that matter, about 15% of our attendees in each conference are single gay men.
15? 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to embark on this journey, here's what we think you need to know before you start. Here are the questions you need to ask yourself, and if you're a couple, discuss amongst yourselves.
Right.
These are the major decisions you're going to have to make along the route. So start thinking about it, start perking your ears, and listen when the providers, when the experts talk on the panels. These are the things you need to start collecting information so you can answer.
You referred to it as a boot camp, which I think is a really interesting way to put it. Because I guess another question that I have is, people who go through boot camps, military boot camps, there is a certain percentage that drop off, that can't make it.
Yes.
So I guess one thing I wonder is, do you consider it part of your organization's value to actually help people occasionally to decide not to have children?
Well, what we always say, and I would reiterate, is that we're not an organization that advocates that you need to become a parent. We're not an organization that advocates that you need to become a parent in a particular way. The mission we have is, if you're considering parenting, we want to make sure you're informed and empowered as much as possible. And that's why we have panels on the first day. We have programs on the first day that we say the purpose of which are to let you know what is it that you're getting into,
right?
So you can make the decision whether this is right for you or not. It's mostly the personal stories panel, which we started with. It's the panel coming up in a couple of hours, which we call a mindful look at surrogacy, where we pause for a minute and say, this is going to be the birth story of your future child if you decide to take this path. How do you feel about it? What are the things you need to consider from the psychosocial aspects of this? How is this going to be good for your partnership? Some people want to become parents so that they can save their marriage. It's like, spoiler alert, not gonna help. Things like that. You know what I'm saying? So absolutely. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, and connected to it, there must be occasionally, especially in your role, some controversy with organizations that are focused very heavily on adoption. Is there? How do you guys sort of interconnect with the other ways of having children?
Well, good question. First of all, our conferences are not identical. So there are conferences where we feature adoption resources at our resource fairs. It has to do with a city. Let me actually back up and say that we don't consider ourselves to be a local organization. Obviously, we're not an LGBT community organization, but rather an international organization that is focused on a particular need and particular set of needs of the community. So we partner with local community organizations everywhere we go. So, for instance, in New York, there is a great LGBT family building fair that is not coincidentally 6 months apart from our conference that features adoption resources. So we're not going to feature adoption resources here. It's a division of labor of sorts. There are places such as when we've been to Texas, we've had our conferences also include adoption resources. Same in Florida. If there's an LGBT center that we're partnering and has their own adoption resource fair or event, then we're not going to feature them here.
Yeah.
In Europe, we have adoption resources for Europeans since they cannot adopt locally. They don't throw as many people to jail in Europe, so there's not as many people to adopt there.
Oh, wow.
Also, there are several countries there where gay people can not even adopt yet. So there is what is called, from the American standpoint, reverse commute adoption. Europeans can adopt American children. And we have a session about that in Brussels. And we have partnered with adoption. So we don't, however, yes, we focus on surrogacy, but we're not competing with adoption organizations or adoption resources. On the contrary.
So I met your family upstairs when we first came in.
Do you involve them in every conference?
Well, our kids are going to be 18 in 2 months, my husband Greg and I. And when I started this organization, there was no staff. I was not even a full-time employee. And my entire staff and volunteers were my family. So
which was, by the way, when did the organization start within the LGBT Center, and then when did it become its own?
So 2005 was the first seminar at the LGBT Center, and 2012 was our first when we incorporated and when we had our first independent conference.
I see.
It was still the LGBT Center at the time, and then we outgrew that and we moved here at 2013.
Well, your kids were pretty young to be pressing to service.
So our kids were not even 12, and they were doing registrations, just the two of them.
That's great.
And with my husband. So they've been
twins?
coming to, they're twins. So they're almost 18 years old, a boy and a girl. They've been on the team panels. My son's going to be on the team panel tonight as well.
Oh, that's great.
Eleanor especially has come to several of the conferences just to volunteer with me. I've been using my companion ticket, on Delta to bring her along. Tomer and they all came to Tel Aviv, to Brussels together, my entire family. So it's very much been like a family pop and pop, business initially, but now, thankfully, it's gone so much beyond that. We have amazing staff. We have a terrific, very dedicated board. So you can see me smiling here and sitting, even having this few minutes to talk to you.
Which we appreciate.
Not the case
Thank you.
Before. So it's because we have an amazing staff and an amazing board.
Terrific.
I see there's a fair upstairs of many types of companies that provide services like fertility and surrogacy services, right?
Correct.
So what is there any criteria to get in? I mean, do you do a screening of the companies?
Yeah, good question. So in order to be involved with Men Having Babies, all these agencies and clinics have to abide by what we call the baseline protocols. So several years ago, we've created what we call the ethical framework for surrogacy. We created it in partnership with a group of surrogates. One of them became a board member, Michelle Pine, and in collaboration with several other organizations in Europe and in Israel. And part of that, one of the first part is statement of principles, which is what we use when we advocate for surrogacy legislation. The second part are baseline protocols, which is what those practices that we think should be the minimum for agencies and clinics before they can engage with us in conferences or at our gay parenting assistance program. So all the agencies above do abide by these, and we turn down some every year. Right. And then we also since I did mention the ethical framework, we also have the third part, which is the biggest, which is the best practices for intended parents. Because we acknowledge that at the end of the day, it's not just up to the service providers or the legislator to determine how this process unfolds, but rather the most of it is at the hands of the intended parents themselves. And if they're more mindful and if they pay attention, then they're more likely to have a process they feel better about, and that also is smoother.
And do you have all of the agency's information on your website? How can people...
Yes, so we have a directory on our website. So, of course, we have resources on the website. There is no, alternative to really coming, I would say. I have to say that to this conference. We even have clips online that I think that's still not the same as coming to our conferences. But nevertheless, we have several very important resources on our website. One of them is a directory of providers that also includes, next to the names and links to those providers, links to their rating and reviews profile.
Okay.
Links to a video of their breakout session. Those providers can give breakout sessions of 20 minutes here, and we video them, so it becomes a way for you to kind of hear more about what they had to say when they were pitching their services. And also it has what they commit to GPAP, the Gay Parenting Assistance Program, whether they commit a certain percentage of discount and maybe even pro bono services. So that's all on our website.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ron.
You're welcome.
For all the information. It's really an amazing conference, and I just want to say that...
I'm glad you made it.
Yeah. And on a personal level, I'll say, we, as I've said before today while we've been interviewing people, we did very little research before we had kids, but the very fact that people like you individually have done it many years before we did really, at least I'll speak for myself, made me feel like this was possible. And so we have a lot to be thankful for.
Absolutely. And this is very gratifying to hear that. And it's gratifying to hear what people say after they've been here. I always say that for me, this is like a karma thing. I felt like I couldn't believe, how amazing it is, to have children, and the thought that other people might not have children, A, because they just don't know how to navigate that, or B, because they don't know, they can't afford it, is just a kind of feeling I couldn't live with. I felt it was bad karma, so I just felt like the more people who do this, the better it is for all of us and for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
That was Ron Pouldayan, the Executive Director of Men Having Babies. Our next interview was with Frank Nelson. He's a board member of Men Having Babies. He's actually from Canada, and we spoke to him mostly about surrogacy in Canada. And Frankie and Alex have teared up during this interview, so that's going to be a very emotional one.
It was our Barbara Walters moment.
We're actually a podcast extension of a blog which your husband BJ was interviewed for. I think it was a year ago.
Oh yes, that's why I recognize the name.
Yeah,
awesome.
that is rare. So, how's Milo?
Milo's doing really good. He actually has strep throat this weekend.
Oh my God.
It seems that every time I go away, my husband just messaged me, he vomits in our bed. And so he said, oh, look at, he just
Your
vomited.
child.
Yeah, my
vomits.
child.
I was just checking because it could have been interpreted that he's angry at you for leaving
No,
it,
no.
and your husband vomits in the bed.
No, he's very, he's a great husband, and he lets
Yeah.
me do these conferences.
That's awesome.
And he would have been here probably if he hadn't had his hip surgery. But my son seems to get sick whenever I do a conference, and always seems to vomit in our bed, which is not, fun.
How
as
old
you
is
know.
he by now?
He's 4.5.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow.
He's awesome.
So, tell us a little bit about your involvement with men having babies.
Well, I guess a couple years ago we reached, I don't know how, but my husband actually reached out to Ron in some capacity. We had some conversations with Ron about surrogacy in Canada. And he said, well, maybe we can have some, you can do something for us. Next thing I know, they asked us to come here to New York to talk, and then was asked to be a board member. Okay. So I think I'm here. We have a lot of people that are interested in surrogacy in Canada, whether it's from Europe or in the States. So I'm just here as an advocate for surrogacy in Canada.
Why do people are interested in surrogacy in Canada?
I think mainly because of, as far as Americans, I think because it's cheaper. I think it's about, I'm going to guesstimate to be half the price.
Is that because of medical coverage in Canada, or is it because of, it can't be the cost of the surrogacy, is it?
I don't know if you know, but the cost of surrogates are not allowed to get paid in Canada. They're allowed to be reimbursed.
Right.
So
it's the same in
Is it? No, I think they can get paid here, right?
Here you are officially allowed to get paid. It's a paid check.
Yeah.
In Canada, there's no not IRS, but there's no accounting involved as far as that. They're only getting reimbursed for expenses put out.
Oh,
wow.
Also, the Canadian dollar. I mean, even if it was 100,000 in Canada, that's 70,000 US dollars.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're already at a cheaper rate just based on that. Also, for Canadians, there's a whole other thing. We have free IVF cycles run by the government. I mean, there's other things.
Right, so the medical,
so it's-
that's huge
Yeah.
right there. Yeah, okay.
So, what kind of question people come
Well,
to you with?
the problem with the reimbursement piece is that it makes people nervous because at least in the States you can, you're charging $40,000, great. In Canada, it's a little gray. It's a little more gray, and I think the other biggest concern is coming back over the border. We have much more progressive laws in Canada, so I'm learning we don't have to do the second parent adoption. If you're married and you have a kid, doesn't matter which parent was the bio dad.
Oh.
You're married, so they're both your kids.
Yeah.
And I often say that should be the way. No offense to straight couples, but you don't do a DNA test when your kid is born, and very well your wife could have been sleeping around for months, and that father automatically gets parental rights.
Yeah.
And for some reason here in the States, it seems that doesn't work for gay men. Because I have if you're interested, there's a couple from Canada that just moved to the States, and one was Israeli, one was American. And but
that's what we do.
The American was Canadian as well,
right?
So they had twins. This was crazy to me. So they came and moved to LA, and only one twin was a
We
parent.
heard about this story.
I did not.
one twin was.
Tell the podcast.
One twin was a parent. They each had different bio dads, but they were twins. So only the twin to the American dad got citizenship. The Israeli, they're still refusing to give the Israeli dad kid citizenship in the States.
Wow.
So that's what I mean by in Canada. Well, I would like to think that wouldn't happen in Canada because I think that's very sad. Shouldn't it just be you're married, you had kids, you get citizenship?
Yeah, seriously.
That's what I feel. But
fascinating.
I'm not part of. I don't decide these things.
So
you're not president of the United
No,
States?
I'm not president.
I'm sad to hear that.
So when you come to these events, and I'm sure a lot of people approach you, what is their biggest fear?
People are still worried about public perception. People are still. I'm always surprised by that part, and then people are worried about how their kid. We do this teen panel, and the questions still are. People don't bully you, all of that stuff. And I don't know, when I became a parent, maybe it's because we are in Toronto, it's a very free-thinking city that I just don't have these, we're so supported by our community, so I'm still surprised that so many people have that internalized fear of what their kids are going to go through.
I have to say what's the most shocking to me is that people's greatest fear isn't having children. I mean, in all honesty, of all of the things to be afraid of, it's the very fact that you're about to take on this awesome responsibility, and I'm frequently surprised by how that seems to be a bit of an afterthought. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to have children, and this is going to be my life, and it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, but I think that if you're, my friend said it to me once we had kids. She says the difference between gay men's parents is you want it, right? Straight couples get pregnant on their wedding night by mistake.
Yeah.
And it's not that they didn't want children, but it just happened. We are planning it for 2 years, saving up our money, mortgaging our houses.
Yeah.
So these children are not mistakes in any means. So you know what you want, and I always knew that I wanted to be a parent.
Which is one of the things that I find so curious about organizations like these and the age ranges that come, because of all of the straight men I've known who have had babies, I know very few of them who, at the age of 25 or 30, would have been saying, I'm really ready to have children. It was, in every case I know of, it was their wife or girlfriend or whatever who had, guided the man into that process. I'm not saying forced, guided, right? And that's why when I look at gay men, I had children when I was much older. I look at gay men in their 20s who are saying, let's do this, and I'm blown away by it.
I knew in my 20s I wanted to have children. I didn't ever think it was possible.
Right.
I was lucky that I had a role model and a cousin of mine who lived in LA and used a surrogate 25 years ago.
Amazing.
It was a traditional one, so not something you would do now, but still, so he was always an inspiration. He never told me how much it cost. He just said it was astronomical.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was not possible. I mean, I agree. The other day, I almost teared up while you're talking to me because my son turned to me, it's only 4.5, and he started talking about when he's a daddy. And it sort of chokes me up because, it just, that's what he sees men do.
Oh,
right.
Sorry. Man, I think I'm getting there too.
It really,
Don't cry.
It really hit me when he starts, and you see it with girls all the time talking about babies, and I don't want to gender stereotype, but I was just so surprised that this is something he keeps talking. Oh, when I'm a daddy, and I'm like,
you have provided that model for him.
Yeah.
I mean,
Amazing.
and that there can be no doubt that right in so many straight families, the children are going to look to the mother as the sort of source of this child making thing.
Yeah.
And in the case of your family and in ours, well, they got to find it somewhere else, and it's going to be us.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
It amazes me.
So one thing that BJ mentioned in the interview is the fact that you guys raise Milo in interfaith house.
Yes.
How does it work? Can you explain?
You know
a
what?
bit?
It's funny you ask this because I'm right now at a point where we just drove. So he, just as an aside, he goes every week to soccer, and it's in a church, St. Bridget's Catholic Church. And you know what he called it the other day? We were driving and goes, oh, I told Bubby and Zeta that we're going to go to soccer at the wedding place. I'm like, what? Oh, the place that people have weddings. So, and so as you mentioned interfaith, we have a lot of customs. We have not talked about God in any way with our child. So I sometimes I'm not even sure where to go with faith. But yes, we celebrate customs around Christmas, around Hanukkah, and we celebrate high holidays. But right now we're trying to just figure out how much God we want to bring into our life.
Because he was talking about bar mitzvah in Jerusalem.
Well, it's funny when I talk about Jerusalem and the bar mitzvah. I think, how much about God do I want? I'm actually struggling right now about it because I have a friend who's adopted a son, and they sent their kid to Catholic school, and I'm like, I don't understand. I really don't, and I've actually struggled with understanding how anyone could send their gay parents can send their son to Catholic school. It's not up for me to decide, but this is a place that doesn't honor their family, and I'm struggling with the interfaith thing right now. I don't know until all faiths accept gay and lesbian couples completely. I just don't want him to be part of anything. I don't know if that answered your question,
it
but
does.
You
It's
know,
interesting.
I'd like to suggest that we use the term faith a lot to describe religion, and I guess it makes sense. Although there's a way of looking at it, which is that in so many ways, and I believe for the vast majority of people, it's not a faith; it's a culture. and therefore
Judaism especially.
Judaism especially, but I don't think that Catholicism or any other form of Christianity is removed from that entirely either. I think there are a lot of people who say, look, this is the way I was raised. These are the holidays that I do, more than, God looks like this and he says that, so therefore we will do the following. I believe that the percentage of those people is much lower than we think. There's a lot of room for it.
I agree, and I'm sure my friends are not sending their kids to that. This Catholic school was very open to their family,
right?
And they're not, they're not stupid people, and they're not sending them to a place that they're going to learn that their family's wrong. But I guess I'm questioning a lot about God right now and what my own beliefs are as I'm getting older and other things. So I don't know what I want to. I went to a religious school growing up, and I took mostly culture from it. I was never that strong. So the talk about faith is a really interesting one right now. Yeah. I don't know about you guys. But
so do you go to every convention, or do you
I go to the conventions that they ask me to go to. Okay. I don't. We're not always needed at all conventions. I definitely go to the ones around Toronto. The ones that I think that they're some interest in Canada. Europe is a big one. So I don't know. I would love to go to Taipei, but I don't know if I'm going there yet.
Oh, I see.
As a teacher, I need a lot of planning,
right.
And they sometimes ask you very last minute. And as a teacher, I can't just walk out last minute.
Yeah, what do you teach? We got to stop with that for a second.
I'm a high school teacher. Currently, I'm mostly computer stuff. I'm teaching Photoshop, Word. I do math as well. But
do your kids or kid? I'm sorry.
Kid.
My son, yeah.
Your
one
son.
yeah.
Does your son understand that you're a teacher and sort of make the connection between that and his teachers?
I think so. This past week, he was sick, and it was our exam day. I took him to school with me. He's been to school with Papa. So I think he has some idea. He had a great time at work with me, playing with whatever. I showed him how our 3D printer works.
That's great. That's awesome.
Will you have more?
We tried a year ago or a couple years ago. You know what? Being a member of this board, really, we thought we had stopped. I came to my first conference. I'm like, we need to have another baby. It's so overwhelming meeting these men all wanting to have children that I just couldn't help but feel. And then talking about meeting men who knew that they wanted to have 2 or 3 kids. I'm like, how did you know? Like, we talk about this a lot. And like, all I knew is I wanted a healthy baby. Like, I didn't even think that was possible. So I never projected more than one.
Right.
And you know what? My son never asked. If he was begging me every day for a brother or sister, I would probably say we would have another one.
Right.
He does not. We bring it up all the time. And so when we bring it up, that's when he goes, oh, no, when I have my babies. Oh. So I'm like, when you have your babies, that's good with me. And hopefully it'll be a lot cheaper.
Right now he gets everything. So
we have a good life, the 3 of us. We travel really, we have a good time.
Thank you very much, Frankie. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
Bye. Okay, we're back with the last interview. This is Nir Karen. He's from Canada as well. And he talked with us about surrogacy.
He talked about surrogacy in Canada for people who are from elsewhere and the kind of services that you can get there.
And it's surprisingly, if you are listening to us from Australia, this is apparently the #1 country of people who are going to Canada to have babies.
They're all part of the British Commonwealth, whatever the hell that means.
Are they?
Yeah. Yes. Somebody could send us an email and explain to us what the British Commonwealth is.
Let's talk about this.
Okay, let's talk about it.
So we're really here with Nir Karen. You're from Canada, right? You came here especially for the conference?
Yeah. I came
wow.
yesterday.
So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you connect with these conferences, because I assume you don't. This is not your first one.
No, it's definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not my first time.
Okay.
So like everybody else, have a personal story, and
we'll hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, and about I think 2.5 years ago, when me and my husband started our own journey, we went to a clinic in Canada, and long story short, we met the doctor there, and at a certain point, the doctor asked me, "What is your background?" My name kind of tells it. So I told him, well, I was born in Israel and I'm in Canada for many years. And then he basically said, well, there's a lot of people in Israel that need to thank me. And I'm like, why? I say, because I created them. And
that's
other than that,
interesting.
making everything way more less intense that the rest of the conversation. We had a good laugh, and then I said, like, really, is it even possible to have international surrogacy in Canada? And so, yeah, I said, I didn't know. I knew about, places like at the past, it was Nepal, Mexico, India, and I even helped a lot of my friends doing translation when they needed there. And it was around, like, under my nose that there is an option to help people, and it actually costs less than what it was in Canada and in Mexico and others, and it's less complicated. So regardless of the fact that me and my husband had started a journey there, I came back home and I didn't even care about my own journey. I was just sitting and saying, I can't believe that I didn't know that it's a possibility. And I have all these people that going to third world countries when there is a country like Canada, which is exactly the opposite than third world.
Yeah.
That it's an option, it's actually costing less. So after not sleeping that night, the next day I spoke to my husband and I told him, I have to do something about it. I need people to know that this option exists because people cannot afford it and they don't know where to go. And all they're going is to dodgy places. So I went back to this doctor and I told him that I decided to open a non-profit organization that will help people go through the process in Canada and more to inform them about the process. At that point, it was just informing them. And he said, wow, this is amazing. This is exactly what we need. I want you to do it with us because we have that. We need somebody to help them and we need you to help us at the clinic doing some stuff. And this is how you'll be able to afford going to these places and sharing your knowledge about Canada. So I opened that and the rest is history. And then I'm a part of Create on one hand, but also a part of Babies Come True, which is kind of combined. But Babies Come True is really going all over the world, explaining people about Canadian option and helping them go through the process in Canada.
I have
How long ago was it?
2 years ago it started.
Okay. And did you continue with your journey to have
I
babies?
have continued with my journey. There's I want to say there's a say in Hebrew, but it's not relevant. I'm not focusing on my journey because I'm helping so many others.
Okay. What's the
status of the journey is unfortunate.
Now listen, on this podcast, because of the Israeli involved, we accept translations. So give us what
So I can say is because I'm really helping. Currently, I'm helping over 600 couples right now going through. There's no other clinic. There is no other any organization that has so many people that helping them.
So tell me something. We used an agency based in Los Angeles that had nothing to do with Canada, but what the intention of or what they provide, right, is a kind of an end-to-end. They're going to help us find the surrogate. They're going to help us find the egg donor. They're going to provide a relationship with the IVF doctor, etc. How does that differ from the service that you provide, which is more focused on explaining the value of doing this through Canada?
Well, I think it's almost the same.
Oh, okay.
But there's not. I mean, the IPs don't pay me anything.
Right.
So in one hand, I'm going as a representative at Create and Babies Come True to all the conferences I can in the world to tell people there is an option, Canadian option. What does it mean? Almost like a Canadian expert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How does the service? How does it work? What's the good? What's the bad? What's the ugly? Because it's never just good. There's things that people need to know about Canada before they decide to go on Canadian route. It's a very different journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm making sure that people know it, and then I'm helping them to go through the process. So yes, obviously working with the biggest clinic in Canada. There's no reason to work with any other clinic. But then if they need egg donor agency, then I'm going to give them the options and we'll connect them with an egg donor agency. Same as basically what you were saying you had in LA. I'm going to help them connect with a lawyer. I'm going to help them connect with that. I'm kind of holding their hand throughout all the process. So same as this agency that you use,
right?
Except it's a service rather than something that people need to pay or sign anything with me or.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty damn big difference. Let me just be clear with you. So it's good to hear.
Well, the thing is that when I was really down with this whole thing, when I heard that Canada is an option, I told to my husband, Canadian have something that they call give back, and it's very big. You have to do something for the world without asking anything in return. So it started by, you know what, I'll just do it 1 year without asking for anything, no asking for money, and then just rolled over.
So in Canada, one of the benefits from actually earlier discussions we've had today, one of the benefits seems to be that because of the nature of medicine in it and the way coverage is handled in Canada, it's cheaper. It's much cheaper for me living in the United States to do my surrogacy in Canada, right?
It's probably around 50% of the cost.
So here's my question. Here you are going around telling everybody about how great this is. If you spoke to, I don't know, some revenue person in the government in Canada, would they say, we love what he's doing? Or would they say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, but it's actually extracting services that we would rather not be provided?
Well, I don't know about rather not provided. Canada always been a country that helping other countries, humanitarian. It's a culture. It's a culture to help other people. So when I'm going to show a video today in a breakout session, and the video is actually not mine. It's a video of CBC, the documentary channel of Canada, that did a video of tracking people through surrogacy. And a part of when they did that video, they did a poll, and they're asking people, do you think that we should allow surrogacy in Canada? And then do you think we should allow the international people go through surrogacy in Canada? And 94% of the people said yes. I don't know exactly how many people. I don't know what the background of the people, but it was open to whoever wanted.
That's incredible.
So Canada is a country that likes to give back. Yes, eventually, I'm sure people are going to say, wait a minute, instead of finding all this diabetes medicine for people, we're spending the money on helping. But for now, people are okay with that. Now, there are other things that we're doing to help. For example, we strongly encourage for people to purchase insurance for after birth. Because during the pregnancy, because of the health system, there's nothing you can do. It's a woman who's pregnant. But after the birth, when the baby is born, we don't want to abuse our government. Amazing ability to give that gift to other.
Sure.
What is the percentage of people that approach you from other countries rather than from Canada?
I would say that the majority today of that program, of the third-party program, are actually international.
Okay.
Because
is there any country in particular, or is it?
Yes. So I would say that the number one country I would say right now is actually Australia.
Wow.
I want to say maybe followed by France. US is huge. We're talking about such big numbers. So the difference between the third place and the fifth place is really not. We're really helping all places in the world. The part of what we believe is, and that's what I do, is go to these places that they don't have the ability to do that. If I go tomorrow to a place like Israel, when they don't have any other, what is their choice? Their choice is either United States or Canada. Not everybody can even afford United States, and they don't even know that Canada is an option. Then they go to all these dodgy places and eventually end up like they end up a few months ago in place like South America. South Africa. The point is that we do have a lot of people that are international, and Babies Come True, that concierge service of Create Fertility Center, is focusing on the international. Because somebody from Canada, from Toronto, can just across the street go to the clinic and speak to somebody and say, hey, I want to have a baby, what can I do? People from other places in the world don't even know where to begin, and they don't understand the process. And I prefer to help them know what it is in advance, before they pay anything, before they commit, so they will actually know what they're in for. And that's what Create Fertility Center is really focusing on. Right.
So let's say that people hear it now in Australia or whatever, they can't fly to Canada to meet you. Obviously there's something they can do, like Skype.
The process is that we always start with a video conference. And sometimes, depending on the place in the world, they're not always comfortable with that, but that's 100% what I and our clinic and Create and everybody demand, because it's personal journey. We want to feed a face. We want to get to know each other. And it always starts by me explaining them everything they need to know about Canada and understand the challenges of this whole roller coaster, and not just a beautiful, rosy journey that with less than a year, you're going to get a beautiful baby and no stress at all. The point is to do exactly the stress check that they will know what it is.
Okay.
And that's how we do that close far relationship.
Okay, Nir, thank you so much for talking to us.
We assume that we can find all this information on Babies Come True
website, or just get to us, babiescometrue.com
babiescometrue.com
and createivf.com. Both of them were the same. So Babies Come True take care of the international clients of
I see.
that, but it's basically one and the same.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's it, basically.
Well, look, I just want to say, first of all, that I was very impressed with the overall, with the event, and with everyone who came and spoke to us. It really touched me to see that these are people who have focused a very big portion of their lives, in addition to, by the way, raising kids and having a day job in some cases, that they also do this. It was amazing. It was also amazing to see the size and complexity of the conference. This was a big deal.
Yeah.
And there were we just grabbing people in the hallway for 5 minutes to interview them. And thank you to all of them for their time in talking to us.
We want to really thank Men Having Babies for including us in the whole arrangement of their conference. There are a few conferences coming up 2019, so maybe you should check out the page menhavingbabies.org, and you can see where you can go and have this experience. I think that beyond the education that you get if you are a couple thinking about having babies, is also the amount of people who are like you, and it's so nice to be in this environment, and people are so friendly to each other, and who knows, like maybe good friendships can come out of that as well. So I strongly recommend to do what we didn't do, and to go to these events and to learn more about it.
So much of this podcast is about us telling you to do what we did not do. So,
we were wrong, basically.
Well,
and you are right. That's it from us for today. This was a special episode of That Is Square with the conference. Next week is a regular episode. We're going to have one guest, and
we don't have regular episodes. All of our episodes are special and different from the one that came before it.
If you want to contact us, then we love it. We love your comments. We love the interview requests and all of your ideas. Please send it to us to hello@daddysqr.com. Alex, have a good week.
You too, Jan.
Bye, guys.